Welcome back to another episode on Growth Vertical. A lot of B2B or marketing teams in B2B are either avoiding AI with their paid campaigns, or they're just throwing everything AI at them across the board and hoping something sticks. So in this episode, we're actually joined by a special guest, Brook Shepard. Thank you, Brook, for coming on,
Thanks
founder
for
of
having me.
Mason Interactive. And we'll get into exactly how AI is being used in performance marketing right now across advertising and how high performance B2B teams are making the most of it. Brooke has spent 12 years actually scaling brands across e-commerce, education, healthcare, those just to name a few, but has also had a specific focus on the data-driven side of marketing, especially around acquisition and performance marketing, and actually spends a lot of his time with his agency in focusing on how they can innovate, ensuring that they have the right initiatives on the go, live at all times, so it has a key, high profile impact on the business itself. So thanks for coming on, Brooke. How are
Thanks
you
for
doing
having me.
today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
So I think if what would be nice is if you could sort of give a bit of backstory, how it even started with Mason Interactive. I mean, you've been doing this for quite some time. Is it 17 years,
Yeah, it's
right?
17 years by luck. Started at one of the very first search engine marketing firms. I'm not sure I even knew it. I was doing SEO on my own as a freelancer, and I ended up working for myself and realizing that I had limitations in what I was doing and trying to grow past those limitations. And I realized it was time for me to work with someone else. And I joined a very early first generation. We didn't even call it performance marketing. It was just like a paid search agency called Send Traffic. And that was in 2004. I joined that team, and that was before there was Google Ads. And so I did that, and I enjoyed that, and I felt fulfilled of that job. And that company got acquired, and they fired everyone in the top tier of the company. And I was one of those people. So I thought for a little bit about what I should do next. And my wife supported me in the idea that I would start my own firm because that's what I knew how to do. And there were some other steps in between there a little bit, but I ended up starting Mason Interactive with two business partners, and been invaluable behind the scenes, sometimes in front of the scenes. So yeah, I was doing it at another agency. I enjoyed doing it. That agency got acquired, fired me, then folded shortly thereafter. I don't think
Wow.
those two things are totally related, but they're not unconnected. And here we are, 17 years later, with $1 billion in assets managed across. Currently, we have something like 60 clients and 35 colleagues here. And yeah, that's the short version.
60 and 35 colleagues, right? So
Yeah,
that's a big deal. Like that's a spectrum, right? To put
yeah,
it in the easiest
that's a
way
lot.
possible. So, I mean, that means you must see the evolution of the way marketing has sort of progressed over time has definitely changed on the radar if you've got such access to like a pie portfolio of clients, right? So performance marketing from back then to now.
Well, it's very different. The other thing is, as an agency, one of the things we see is we see trends across clients that no one client can see. So one of the things we're building
Mm.
on our own and our own AI dashboard is a system that automatically takes a look at your ads and compares it to everyone else in the portfolio and says, what are the characteristics here among winning ads, and what do you have in common with other winning ads, and what can we learn from them? So yeah, that's a big change. But it started very, for those who don't know, before Google Ads, there was a product called, well, whatever it was called. It was a Yahoo product, really. And it would let you bid on each keyword that you wanted, one interface, and your bids would go out across 7search and Ask Jeeves and five other search engines that no one remembers anymore. And Google was one of them, and Yahoo was one of them. And you would just put in the bid, and you could see everyone else's bid. So if your competitor was bidding $1, you could bid $1.01, and you show up above them, and it was just who paid the most. And then Google Ads changed that and made it more complex. And I think the biggest difference is, I think that maybe clients aren't aware of how much AI has been used for the last 5 years. Like it's a new thing. And we are using chat now, and Notebook LM and Claude differently than we were using things in the past. But there's been AI in the Google Ads platform and the Meta Ads platform for 5 or 6 or 7 years at least, that we've always been leveraging for people.
Actually, interestingly, there's something you said that it's been around for a while, right? And I think notably, I remember there was a surge, and you probably saw this too. I remember there was just a massive surge of AI products. But one of the things that I thought notably on like Google Ads, especially performance marketing side, was the introduction of essentially the assets that you tie to your search
Mm-hmm.
keywords. The other day, I went onto the ads platform for one of the clients, and you can see a bunch of the AI versions that were created automatically by
Yeah.
Google. And I
Yep.
was like, hold on, So this is where a lot of the spend's going for these guys. You look at it and you're thinking, why are there 3 different versions with, I don't know, just text put together, not understanding the context behind what this means if you put those 2 sentences together and then how it runs. Next thing you know, there's tons of spend behind those things, which is
Right.
pretty normal if that
Right.
if that
Right.
makes
There
sense.
should be a scrubbing process that goes through that. But yes, that's exactly right. And they've had automatic bidding for a long time in these platforms. But yes, that's a really salient point you bring up. But they've had even more based than that. They've had programs for a long time that would purport to find the right audience for you that didn't quite work the way they were supposed to, and they're getting better. You know, Meta is very open about the idea that it wants to get rid of advertising agencies. Like, and I think that if you're a small business and you're starting out, the tools available to you are greater than ever before in terms of automatically changing what's going on. But you know, if you're dealing with a fashion client who takes the images very seriously, they want nothing to do with an ad that's been automatically resized or rejiggered and put into place. And a lot of what the team does sometimes is spend time putting out fires with clients where they say, why did I show this? I saw this ad. We didn't approve it. Why is it live? Well, the AI decided that they wanted to fit your square image into a round hole. And so they cropped it the way they thought it should be cropped and they put it up. And that's not great. I don't actually think that advertisers are served by that generally, unless you're a very small team and you're just starting out. But like, brand is paramount. And I don't know why anyone would really want a robot to completely, and we're heavily into AI. I'm not anti-AI, but I don't understand why anyone would want their brand to be degraded and deprecated by turning on a robot to automatically do versions of their creative that doesn't speak to the founder's voice. But some people do that, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just not a thing that I think works super well. Right?
Yeah, I think that there's the whole 2 camp side of things, right? So there's going to be a whole, I'd say there's going to be, but there's already been that surge, right? That's where marketing is at the minute with AI and how it's being used. I think AI has just almost been thrown around, and it's almost like the hype is sort of outrunning the practical application.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if there is application, it's done haphazardly. So right now, I think I saw a tweet the other day, which was pretty interesting to framing it. But because of this haphazard execution, there's 2 camps now, and the 2 camps is you're either going to be the executor that takes it on board, runs with it, deploys a bunch of stuff, and automates the hell out of everything in marketing. So asset creation, copy, analysis, that sort of thing. Or you're going to be on the other camp that think that to cut through the noise now, instead of sheer volume, it's going to be, can I reach out to this person with the old school mailer, right? Or the old school direct mail, personalize around that? Can I turn up at the event and try to get them to come for a coffee instead of all these online booked meetings or something like that? Or just show up at the office with something that's relevant or something like that. Like almost thinking out the box, but more personal.
Yeah. I get a lot of emails. I do a lot of podcasts. I do a lot of public speaking. And last month I spoke with our creative director at a university here in the United States, Eastern Connecticut State University. And we spoke about AI and advertising. And I posted that on LinkedIn. And I get a lot of messages on LinkedIn that say, I get emails from LinkedIn that say, hey, Brook, I heard you're talking at Eastern Connecticut State University about AI. And I'd love to speak to you about our platform. You know, I get these sales emails, these solicitation emails. And I know that no one listened. I know that not all these salespeople listened to the whole recording of the speech. I know that it's AI generated. I find that to be kind of sloppy personally, but maybe it's because I'm in the industry and I know what it is. Maybe if you're not like, oh my God, they listened to me, I'm very flattered. And maybe people love that, but I have a different response to it, which is, you know, why would the slop? But people have different ideas.
It's actually interesting. During COVID, there was the surge of let's personalize on first line based off of like some content that someone's either posted or engaged with on LinkedIn, for example. And so there would be a lot of sales emails that would templatize anything from the second paragraph below, but the preview text or the first line is always going to be personalized. And all it was personalized to something on the profile. Now, what's interesting now that you bring this up is I agree. I've had people say like, oh yeah, I saw this amazing episode or something, and it was pretty insightful and we're doing something in a similar space. That's perfectly fine, I think. But I do know that you put that in. I do know where you've got that from. I know that there's probably AI that's probably done some heavy lifting for you. Plugged my URL into my LinkedIn URL or my podcast URL and something. It scraped a bunch of information. You found some context and that's it. I think, to be honest, we're going to get to a point where it's, if I care about it, I'm going to address it or I'm going to get back to it. If not, it's just going to get ignored. I don't know what your thoughts
I
are
think
on
we've
that.
got about a month or two left until everyone's inbox is filled with AI slop, and it's unavoidable. And I think it's going to be really an interesting time. I already have clients. I can tell because we do all these things. If anyone's listening, if you haven't hooked up Claude, all right. So we use Monday for task management. We
Mm-hmm.
use Slack for internal communication. We use emails for some clients, but not all of them. Some of them are in Slack. And so I've got these 3 data points, right? And you can hook up Claude to look at all 3 of those or 4 of them at once, depending on which, via an API connection. And you can tell it to summarize your day and who didn't do what, right? I can do things like this new statement of work came in for a client. Here it is. Tell me who doesn't have a corresponding set of Monday tasks for these last 3 SOWs, statements of work, so I can see where we're behind. Like I can do all that stuff. And the way it writes emails, it'll draft emails for you. The way it drafts emails, it's like the way you can still tell when something's written by chat. You can tell when Claude has written something in an email because of the formatting. And I have a client who I know is not reading anything I'm sending them, and I know has Claude responding to all of it. And it's really it's
Wow.
like I'm not even being critical, but like I feel like the guy's missing some nuance sometimes. And he's a small business operator here in New York. We don't have a lot of clients that size anymore. We could, they're great. We're not being critical, but like he's a solo practitioner of a specific firm in Midtown Manhattan, and I know he's not reading anything I send him. He's just having a robot respond to it. So it's not the life I want to live, but it seems to be the life we're hurtling towards.
Yeah, this whole like agentic, use getting an agent created so that you can do all the correspondence and all the admin and all the back and forth of deals and stuff. I don't see how we're going to operationalize something like that without it. Just feels like you're setting up a black box, right? Okay, yeah, give me a summary and it will give you a summary, but what about everything else beneath that? What about everything beneath the hood? And that's scary.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the other thing is the Economist has all these pieces about the productivity boom from AI hasn't come yet, and I have a feeling. Although I think we're in a productivity sprint right now, like the way we're spending time building out our own AI systems at Mason, I think other companies are too. The way I think about it is part of the way we get new clients is referrals, part of it is advertising, part of it is cold outreach, part of it is trade shows, and part of it is RFPs. Request for proposal. Client puts out
Mhm.
an RFP. They say, this is what we want. We used to do RFPs, and we have someone who does them, and they would take a lot of time, and she would do 5 a year. And now we can do 30 a year because we still need to collate and they still need to be looked at and they're still complex. But now we can do 30 a year. But the thing is, I'm not competing with AI to get those 30 RFPs. I'm competing against other agencies using AI. So they're also now doing 30 RFPs. So we're working harder than ever to train these models to respond to RFPs, but there's no
Mhm.
actual productivity boom, at least in my industry, from it. And there are some things that are more productive now, but there's no real output in the sales feature from that because everyone else is using it too. And so we're all just sending out 3 times, 5 times, 10 times as many RFPs. A place where it does make things faster is scheduling emails. Right, if we have an agent that a new lead comes in and an agentic setup, we'll take a look at the emails coming in and route them to the right salesperson. So that stuff's good. Being able to do creative quickly is good. We know we can do a commercial now, a full 30-second CTV commercial, and it used to take us 15 people and $80,000 and 5 weeks. And now we can do that with 3 people, $20,000 in 2 weeks. So
Yeah.
that's speeding it up. And the way we can create variations of assets and chop them up, that stuff's a huge productivity boom. But again, other people are using that too. And if they're not, they're going to be out of a job pretty soon.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty much on the side that you would, in order to make use of AI in the most impactful way possible, it should be more operationalized on how it could speed up your workflow, right, in getting to your answer sooner. So it's more a support mechanism over a complete creation mechanism, right? But I mean, you've probably heard this from founders or something. I don't know if you've come across anything in particular from founders and marketers just thinking about this the wrong way. Anything that's sort of surprised you so far in the way that they're spending resources?
No, the people aren't bringing it up a lot. There's a lot of pressure. We work with a lot of it. Look, it's going to take a long time for large companies to operationalize these things. If you're dealing, what I've seen is that if you're dealing with a smaller company, I was in London last week talking to a client, and he sat down and he opened up his. So here's a way that was surprisingly awesome.
Mm.
It's a tailoring business in Savile Row, and I like them a lot, and I like the product, and I like them. I like working with them. I was sitting in their beautiful workshop that is resplendent in tradition. It's really wonderful. And you're sitting there, and the guy calls up his Shopify, and there's now an AI widget in Shopify where he has it analyze different parts of his business, and it was intelligent the way he was doing it, and he was doing it quickly, and he got outputs. Now I'm not sure I agree with all the outputs, but he was really sophisticated in the way he was plowing through a lot of complex analyses that would have taken 6 weeks before. And that can be as easy as something as like, here's our last stock. How's so much we sold of each piece of stock in the last 5 years? Help me plan my next drop. How many of the blue suits should I order instead of how many of the gray? Like that's easy stuff. But he was using it for a very sophisticated way. So that's awesome. His business is going to do better because he has those tools. Larger companies, I see some strange things. I've sat behind a client's desk before and seen them take every email that comes in from me, from their boss, from Salesforce, whatever, and dump it into chat, get a response, and put it back into email and send it out. Like that's not a good use of the technology as far as I think, because that's just going faster to no end. So I've seen smaller businesses leverage it in a really intelligent way. But I don't see any way in the United States that I think there's at least a 50% chance that 25 to 30% of white collar jobs will be evaporated in the next 2 or 3 years. I think there's a halfway chance it's going to happen. Certainly entry level jobs are already showing down serious signs of slowing down the hiring. But these larger companies are going to take years to go through it. If you're dealing with a global multinational, like some of our clients, they're not going to have a policy that just allows AI agents to create their email programs overnight because they've got policy concerns and security concerns between their 5 different. So it's going to take a little, but smaller businesses, I guess is what I'm saying, are moving more quickly because because there's fewer barriers between their departments. If you're a 5 or a 10 person or a 2-person team,
Right.
if you're a 200-person team or a 1,000-person team, the challenges are much higher. The barriers to entry are much higher to adopting these things in a serious way, I think. So I choose to think of it as an opportunity for smaller businesses to get ahead of the curve and grow more quickly. And that's the optimistic view I have.
Yeah, I think that's good. I mean, I think, and it's definitely true because I've seen even the part of the clients that I work with definitely started adopting it, looking at implementing Claude across just operationalizing it and essentially making it a mandate internally to learn how we can speed up certain things or develop certain things, but more so empowering the individual person in the business to create and fast track a lot of the initiatives that they already had in their on the back burner, in the backlog, right? So can we get this done quicker? But also that sort of cross pollination of skills. I don't know if you're seeing that too, but sort of taking it a step further and saying, hey, okay, instead of marketing having to wait for the dev department to sort something out, the smallest thing to do with tracking or something like that on GTM, well, we can make use of AI and the database that it has to come up with an answer of how we can set up, let's say, a tracking for a system where we're transferring UTMs, that sort of thing.
Yeah. That's smart. Have you used Manus a lot lately?
Manus is something that's on the radar. I used it once before the acquisition, and now I'm looking to use it one more time, or a few more times, to dive into content strategy and planning.
So I find it really interesting. The issue is if you use Manus, it will give you pretty good analysis of what's going on in your meta campaigns. Yeah. The issue, however, lo and behold, surprise, surprise, its answer is always going to be spend more on meta. Like once Meta has their own AI, whose job is to analyze the meta campaigns, you know what the answer is going to be. It's going to be more meta. It's the same way like GA4 is biased towards Google, right? Just to say this out loud, I'm not sure everyone, I know you do, I'm not sure everyone actually gets this. If you see an ad on Meta and then you go to Google and you search for it and you buy it, GA4 is going to say that the sale was attributed to Google, and Meta is going to say they got a sale from Meta, and they're going to see 2 sales, even though your Shopify is only going to show 1 sale.
Yep.
Like you get that, but not everyone gets that, right? And so I bring that up to just say that Google is biased to Google and Meta is biased to Meta. And if you're using their in-house tools, the answers are always going to be do more Meta or do more in Google. And I think there's a lot of value to having a system like we have that bridges the gap between those two things and takes a look at the interconnected nature of how those things are working.
Yeah.
That's my only issue with Manus, which is a very sophisticated tool. It's very helpful. It speeds stuff up. It's just its answers are always do more meta,
Yeah. There's going to be some inherent bias whilst these things are evolving as well, because at the moment they're trying to get I mean, a lot of the competition isn't just usage. A lot of the competition's behind how many users can we get to go towards one AI platform versus another. And that's why you see a lot of these acquisitions take place, or a lot of these developments, like with Claude blocking ChatGPT in some ways, and ChatGPT with Manus, and so on, right? So I think it is definitely a competition, and it's better to use certain things for certain use cases, but also cross check. I mean, I do this myself, right? I'll go on ChatGPT and use Claude, and I'll be like, okay, I've come up with this in this system. Can you be critical about what this is, what's good, what's bad? Should I improve? And there are times where you will get a response that actually this system does work and ChatGPT is fine from Claude, right? So
I've actually done a lot of that. That's a smart. That's I use them. I use them for different things, but that's a smart answer. Look, here's something it's not going to solve for right now, and I don't know that it ever will, because of the inherent bias, and it may, by the way, but because of the inherent biases, and certainly in my industry, advertising is under pressure from AI. But so a client says, and more than one client has said, turn off Meta because it's not giving me leads for my B2B business. Stop it. It's not driving leads. And I think in a lot of cases, and I've said this before, judging Meta sometimes, maybe in B2B especially, judging Meta by how many leads it's giving you is like judging a fish for how far it climbs up a tree. Like it's just not relevant. It's not its job. Its job is to introduce you to the product so you can Google it later, or you're more receptive when you get that email outreach later on. So the client says, turn off Meta. It's not driving any leads. And I said, you don't want to do that. Like it's not going to be successful for you. Don't do it. My best advice is don't do it. And the client says, do it anyway. And lo and behold, you turn it off and everyone looks very smart for the first week or two because, oh my God, my cost per lead dropped. I'm no longer spending inefficiently. That's called performance marketing. And within 2 or 3 weeks, they weren't getting any leads organically and their Google results fell off a cliff, right? And so they saw that that happened and they believed that those two things were connected. And so we designed a test to prove that those things were connected by doing geographic holdout studies and designing that test. A robot could have designed that test, but designing that test and getting buy-in from it across the organization was key. And then we went and we got the third-party imprimatur of an Ivy League data scientist to look at the test and not rubber stamp what we're doing, but critique it and be honest about it. And now we can find out with certainty, statistical validity, that if we spend an incremental 30% on Meta, it may not get leads. Any leads you get there are fantastic. They're great. But what it's really doing is driving 30% incremental, is driving 40% incremental revenue in Google within a month. So Google all of a sudden looks better because of the Meta you were spending. So you spend 30 cents on Meta, get 40 cents more on Google. That's called efficiency. And tying those things together in an interconnected way is key, and the kind of thing that takes intelligence and diligence and perspicacity to pull off, right? And Manus is not going to tell you that. Manus is just going to say, spend more on Advantage Plus shopping. Let us use some AI ads to make it work. And that's okay. That's part of the ecosystem. But like thinking about the whole picture and cutting through the noise and being able to say, listen, I've seen this with 20 other clients in the last quarter. Let me tell you what's going on with yours. I think there's value.
Yeah, that's a good point actually. And using those, essentially tying those disparate systems to come up with a broader, bigger picture, right? And I think that's what we lack because there's so much data in these separate systems.
Yes.
Which is why I mean, I'm a massive advocate for like this tying everything to your one centralized system like your CRM, which holds a lot of your first party data, so you can get the one big picture and you can avoid going into just Google Analytics, right? Or just Google Ads and just Microsoft, whatever the case may be.
Yeah,
but
100%.
This is great, like Brooke. I think so. What we could do is maybe if we could move on to like the applications of how you guys are using it at Mason Interactive, right? And where you found the most impact is. So we can talk about anything, right? That it's being used for. One of the use cases is, of course, advertising creative.
Yeah.
AI has obviously the many applications, but one of the areas is obviously those paid campaigns that we're talking about, the paid ads specifically. So how are you guys finding that it's becoming the most impactful in the process of?
For us, yeah. For us, it still comes down to taste and creative and the ideas.
Mm-hmm.
These machines are not coming up with new ideas. They're iterating on past ideas and saying, and that's fine. There's a value in that. But so we are using specifically in Meta, and Google, we are specifically using AI to create more ads more quickly. Aman Hotels is a client of ours on the creative side. They give us static images because the photo shoot didn't have budget for videos. So they give us static ads, and then we stitch those together with some light animation. And you can't do it too much because it looks uncanny. But you can take a picture and you can say animate it, and the hand will move. And then you can go to the next picture and the horse will move. And you can stitch these together. And we're using AI to take static images from Aman Hotels and turn them into short form video. And that's a specific thing we're doing.
Yeah.
And that's efficient, and we don't have to charge a lot for that. But the idea for how to do it is still paramount, right? Because the idea of like how to combine those clips and how to be aware of social media trends and what kind of music to put behind it is still very important. If you let someone with no taste do it, you're going to end up with something that looks like everyone else's ads, which again is not what anyone wants.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. And so like when you guys are testing the creative as well, right? Is there something that you guys strive to be like, this is what a good creative would be, like a benchmark almost, or is this something that you guys are using internally maybe?
We have an internal benchmark. The thing we're building out now that I actually have code running in the background is so across our 60 clients and our $1 billion of spend, we know what a good click-through rate is at the top of the funnel. We know what a good
Mm.
conversion rate is at the bottom of the funnel. We know that. And so we're building a system being built right now where when we look at a client's ads, it compares it to the portfolio as a whole and says, are you above or below? Because a lot of it is talking to the clients about a lot of my job is developing consensus with clients about what they should be doing. And it's easier to say you need more creative because meta charges on an impression basis. If you're doing remarketing at the bottom of the funnel, there is a finite number of people at the bottom of that funnel. And we can use lookalikes to expand it, but it's a finite number. Like there's a certain number of people that visit your website. And if it's 1 million people and you show ads to them 5 times, that's 5 million impressions. Meta does not care if you have a good click-through rate or a bad click-through rate because they're charging by the impression. So it behooves you economically to get a good click-through rate to get people to your site
Hmm.
because then you're spending the same amount of money as if you get a bad click-through rate, but you're going to get more traffic to your site if the click-through rate's better. Here's your click-through rate. Here's how it compares to everyone else. You need to do better. That's a better argument than me saying, I think your creative should be changed because its click-through rate isn't good. So we're using it behind the scenes specifically to create benchmarks across the portfolio to compare to clients to develop consensus.
And in terms of speed, I'm guessing so because you have these already operationalized, you're able to just refer to them very quickly through the AI as well, or is this something that
Yeah, no, it's
consumes
right.
like a way?
I just click on the button. Like
Yeah,
when the client logs in, we have a bunch of benchmarks for it. It's actually really cool.
yeah. And then
The
how?
crazy thing is I'm building it. The crazy thing is for years, yeah, the crazy thing is for years I've tried to talk to designers about and engineers about building something. I've been told for 2 decades I've been told, no, you can't. It's just a multi, we did something 2 years ago when Claude was first on my radar. So right now all of our reports are made through Looker. They go through Funnel and a spreadsheet gets made and they go through Funnel and they go to Looker and they get kicked out. And those reports are pretty good. And they have some problems here and there, but they're pretty good. So we have 2 years ago, we set up a thing where those reports go automatically to a database, and Claude has a prompt that looks through those reports and generates an analysis, and it comes out, and there's your agenda for the meeting, like an instant agenda. But no one used it at my team because the interface was so kludgy because it was designed by a developer, and the developer's idea was like, sure, just you run this SQL query to get no account manager 2 years out of college wants to run a SQL query to get an analysis. They're never going to do it. And so now
Right.
I'm able to code it so it just shows up in the box on the client's website. So I'm really having fun using these tools to develop our own AI programs. And I've been all in like 12, 13 hours a day coding for the last month because I'm really loving building these systems. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. So it's like a lot of, would you say like you're vibe coding it as they're saying it right now?
I don't know if I'm vibe coding as much as I'm debugging. Like, why is this not right? It's off by 32 cents. And if it's off by 32 cents, the client's going to lose trust. It has to be accurate. Rerun it. So I don't know how vibe coding is. I'm going to need a new glasses prescription when it's all done, but it's fun stuff.
I mean, do you know what? This is an interesting point that you bring up because this is one of the biggest applications. I think it's the fact that we get to build and essentially ship ideas, ship these experiments much faster than we were able to even prioritize them and score them on a sheet and say, okay, we'll do this 2 months, 3 months later. And now you could probably get to it within a couple of days and say, okay.
I once worked at a tech company for a little bit where they had an agile development process. And my job was the head of search engine marketing at this company. They were a tech process. They were a tech company that and you can look me up on LinkedIn. I don't want to say their name, but they were a tech company whose job was to create an automated ad process. And this is 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago,
Well,
18 years ago. And you'd sit there and it worked via a series of algorithms. And it was a good company and they were well run. But so I would always say there was a thing that used to happen in Google Ads where you were rewarded for having a good click-through rate by the output of getting a good click-through rate was you'd get a good quality score, which meant you'd pay less per click. So there was a benefit to getting a really good click-through rate. And the way
right.
you'd get a really good click-through rate is you would overbid on your ads. This doesn't happen anymore, but you'd overbid on your ads and you'd artificially get a good click-through rate. And people would say, that's impossible. You can't be gaming the Google system like that. But I was, and we did, and it worked. So when we launched a new account, we'd jack up the bids by 50% above what Google recommended, and our click-through would be better because it would be the top of the page. And then Google would say, you have a good click-through rate. You're going to pay less for every click hereafter. And I couldn't get that operationalized at this tech company I was at because the head developer in the agile development process didn't like my idea, or I wasn't speaking about it well enough, or I wasn't articulating it cleanly enough. That's true too. And so we couldn't ever get it implemented. Today, I would be able to implement that on a black box on a dev site. I'd say, could you just give me the code? And he probably wouldn't give me the code. But maybe I could convince him to give me the code, and I could do it over here, and I could show it to him, and it would work. So you're right, dude. You could do this stuff so quickly now.
Yeah, I think it's honestly insane, some of the stuff that people are doing, even like founders just getting involved and being able to take the spare time to build something that's just off the top of their head, right? Which is crazy. So I think with you guys, with the creative process that you mentioned that you guys go through, have you had people sort of say or recognize that's AI creative, or does it look completely natural? Or how has that been?
No, it doesn't look completely natural. I don't think and maybe it will soon. I don't think, but we're not striving to make it look completely natural, or we're trying to cut off before you get into the uncanny valley. We're not trying to produce things that are intentionally aggressively AI, although there was just a Gucci campaign where they tried to do that and succeeded, and it looked fake because it was fake, and that was the goal. But no, we haven't tried to produce anything. We have done some things for SC Johnson here in the States where they only had static photographs. Caldrea at SC Johnson only had static photographs of their soap bottles. So we were able to animate their soap bottles dancing through Capri and small towns in Italy. That was obviously AI because soap bottles don't dance. But you would have done that with animation 10 years ago and by hand 50 years ago, and everyone knows what those things are. It didn't. We haven't produced anything. We're trying to stop short of making things that are really, really gross. Also in New York, you now need to have, if you're using AI to generate something in New York, your ad needs to have that on as a disclaimer in New York State, which I think is great. I think it's a little bit like
I think
I don't know how long it's going to last, but I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, TikTok had that with some of their content pieces, didn't they? Where it had to say that it was AI generated and that sort of thing, because there was a lot of people that were getting duped into thinking that the content was real, so it's going viral, and then people were, I don't know, believing that the megalodon is back and that sort of thing.
Do you know the Staples baddie?
I think so. That rings a bell.
The Staples baddie, because it gets down to authenticity. Staples, an office supply company here in the United States, not our client, has a corporate TikTok account that is very boring. And it has the bosses of the company that look like me, the middle-aged guys that look like me. And they're all doing like fake meme jumping and meme harvesting. And it doesn't look good. So someone who works at Staples, who calls herself the Staples baddie, who has an exaggerated California drawl, will talk about, come to Staples, we can get anything, it's great, I'm going to make the coffee cup, here's how I'm going to make it, I can just make it for you. And she's so compelling, and she's so outre and so unique. She's just an hourly employee at Staples posting about what she does at Staples. And she's got millions and millions of views in her TikTok because it's authentic, right? And she's very aware of the memes, and she's very aware of where she sits in the ecosystem. But that is proof that the authenticity is what matters to people. The AI, I'm sure she's using AI to help edit that stuff, but the authenticity and her taste shines through. And that's more important than whether she used like program 1 or program 2 to edit the thing down. So.
Yeah. I think it's interesting you say that, because even with the episodes that we sort of create, or in tutorials and that sort of stuff, I use AI to take care of some of the heavy lifting on the speed of editing out gaps and things like that. Right. But as ultimately the insights and the hooks would come from me, because if there's a hook that I'm like, that's not a good hook, right? It doesn't mean anything to marketers, then I'm never going to post that, right? So it'll only be for stuff that is going to matter, and is going to be like an authentic point made by one of us, for example, or during the tutorial, or whatever the case may be. So it's important to sort of have that set up as that quality gate. So speed is obviously one of the areas where you guys have sort of found that it shines, but do you have like a creative testing framework that you think that people should generally go through in terms of producing reliable creatives versus things that are just noise?
Right? It's changing so quickly. A year ago, the best practice in meta ad copy was to have several variations and to isolate variables and test them and find out what the best. The meta has been very good for a long time at using their AI to tell you what your best ad is. For years, they've been very good at that. What they're not good at is telling you why that was the best ad, so you can make more of them. So if you would test and isolate variables, let's take the best ad. Let's use 4 calls to action to find the best one. Great. Now I've got the best ad with the best call to action. Now let's test product shots. Should it be a hero? Should it be a marble flat lay? Should it have light animation? Let's find out. There's a winner. Great. So now I've got the best ad with the best copy and the best call to action and the best shot. Like you do that. It doesn't work that way anymore. The way Meta's working now is they're demanding to see different personas in the ad. If you're trying to appeal to a corporate buyer, you need ads that appeal to the persona of the corporate buyer. And that is more important than having ads that we're testing small, minute variables like is the red or the green better. Those are still important things to test, your call to action and what color the button is and how big it is. But more important, layered on top of that now, is are the personas of the people you're trying to reach reflected in your creative? So that's like the number one thing. And you can use AI to do that, by the way. You can take all of your ads, you can dump them into Claude, and you can say, hey, tell me, do I have enough personas in here? Who do you think I'm reaching? Or here's my personas I'm trying to reach. It's the mid-career professional, or it's the media buyer, or it's the procurement specialist. Am I appealing to their needs? And that's a good way to use this stuff too.
That's actually interesting because we even recently created like a essentially a bank of the ICP and the personas, and then fed that into Claude. But with some initial messaging we got out for this was for particular cold campaigns. We fed that back in to say, okay, for this persona, have I met the key points for to add in the value messaging? And so Claude's able to like go through all of those things and say, yes, you have hit on these points. Therefore, this is probably going to pass your check for, does it even appeal to this audience? And I think that's a good way of leveraging AI, because for for us to create it, to continue to have our eyes on it, there's going to be a lot of that blindness that we have in the process when you're writing it, but then also trying to peer review it, that sort of thing. So to step away from it and give AI something to be as almost like a quality gate.
It's always before a piece of creative goes to any of our larger clients, anyone in the top fifth of our portfolio, a person, and usually it's me, but it could be our vice president, someone needs to dump that into some AI and say, did you spell check this? Is it to Associated Press standards? What problems do you see? And yeah, it still needs to be driven by a human, but it's very useful for coming up with personas and proofing things 100%.
Yeah. And this was all fed from your framework, correct? That you guys have set up internally with your checklist or your quality gates. You feed that to Claude and say, okay, I'll do it.
Yeah.
So that's good. That's good, because then it helps people at a structural level to sort of make sure it's consistent across the board and not each employee is not doing it very differently.
Last month you used apply now at this part of the funnel. This month you're using find out more. Was that intentional?
Yeah.
That's a great thing to have the system to. Cool. Yeah. Let me think about it.
And what do you think that looks like? How do you think that this, for example, with startups, with B2B marketing especially, you can imagine there's like a lot of 1 person, 2 person, maybe even 3 person team compared to like the larger enterprises. So how do you think that they can apply a framework like this directly straight away without worrying? Right. If I were
a 1 person team, it'd be different, because so I had this bizarre painting behind me. I'm always sort of trying to hide it while I'm talking. It's not really super professional.
I noticed it earlier.
It stands out. But if I were like starting a consultancy today, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to hang out my shingle and be a consultant, and all I need is 5 clients. I don't know that I'd be so worried about tying everything together, because it's still all live in my brain. And I would probably buy a bunch of off-the-shelf things for not a lot of money that would help me do LinkedIn prospecting. It would help me do outbound emails. It would help me make ads. So I think you can just reach out for what you need. It's probably been built, and then work at it. At the size we're at, which is a mid-sized business, independent agency, we're not generally selling to those people, that we do. And we're not generally selling to multinationals, although we have a bunch of clients. The way we're leveraging it the most is to tie all of our systems together so that our 35 colleagues in the company have a unified framework for what they're doing. That's the way we're using it. I don't want someone in our Charlotte office who has a great idea to do something differently than someone in our New York office who has a different great idea. I want them to be operating. I want all the ideas to be cross-pollinating. And I don't know how to do this successfully, but I want them to be cross-pollinating across the offices and the teams and working correctly. And that means it should be dumped into one system and one interface where I have feedback from people, where the outputs are delivered according to their. I wouldn't need that if I were a 1 person company starting over. I could just be willy-nilly going out and doing stuff.
Yeah. So for example, if you were to create like a repeatable system using AI for it, then you would say that you would set up the quality gates yourself as a 1 person team, and you'd always feed in, let's say, your creatives, which is what we were talking about earlier, your creatives, and make sure that they just meet the benchmark. If they do, they pass. If they don't, they fail. And this is the reason why they fail, because they don't meet these particular quality gates. Then you can peer review that or check that further. Yeah. That's pretty interesting as well, right? So are you using AI for anything else aside from the creative process? I mean, there's like a ton of applications, especially at Mason Interactive, with the number
We're
of
using
clients
it.
you
We're
have?
using it. We're trying. Look, we're a creative led agency that leverages data to drive performance for our clients. We're using it across all facets of the business. We're using it for creative. We're not really using it for SEO content. We're using it to help debug things. We just launched a new website for a health clinic here in Manhattan, in New York City, and it would have taken us 5 times the budget if we didn't and the time, if we didn't have the ability to use AI to debug our. We're using it in all facets of the business. There's no place it's not.
Do you think one of the problems right now is that people are only one dimensional with the way that they think that they should be using AI? And for example, just copy writing
Yeah,
or
well,
content creation.
I think I sort of the biggest point I'd want to make is, and I sound a little bit like an old fuddy-duddy here. I mentioned earlier that we spoke at a university a week or two ago about AI. The biggest point I'd make is the students kept asking our creative director, "What did you use to make this ad? Was it Nano Banana? Was it in Adobe Core Suite? What did you use?" And he would answer them. But I think our point was that it doesn't really matter, because whatever tool you're using now is going to be a different tool in 6 months, and it was a different tool 6 months ago. So to get hung up on the practicalities of the tools, to me, is short-sighted. And I think that a liberal arts education, or by the way, that could be a coding education too. Not that coding as a career is a good move right now, but learning how to code and learning the intellectual constraints and learning how to think that way creatively. Those creative neural pathways are so important for leveraging these tools, and to be open-minded and to try all of them and not get hung up on, this is the one tool I use. All these tools should be driving a business outcome, which could be improved retention, because that could mean a centralized dashboard. It could mean I want my creative to outperform. I'm going to analyze all my creative. Like, it has to be, the thought behind it still has to be king, and they have to be driven by intelligence and business outcomes, as opposed to narrowly saying, I'm going to use chat for this one thing.
Do you know what? That's it. I actually love that you said that, because recently we had an initiative where we took a bunch of the data, let's say with the creatives, and it was at multiple steps of the process, right? So creatives, so the type of message, but the campaign that we ran, was it like leaderboards? Was it the format, right? And then also the particular medium that we're going after. And then we're talking about the source, right? So what particular mode or brand was driving those meaningful touch points? And a lot of people tend to the basis of just export all your data and the stuff that you were crunching before.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you because it's so exciting.
Yeah.
So if I ask any account manager here what the best ad was for the sale last week, all of them will be able to, and maybe it'll take them 5 minutes, but maybe it'll be at the top of their heads. All of them will be able to say quickly, it was this ad. This is the one that did well.
Yeah.
What they can't do, and no human can do, is take a look at all the thousands of ads you've run over the last 5 years.
Yep.
And say what's unique about them. And Claude and Gemini can do that. It can load in all the images, and it can say, what are the commonalities? So we have a client I mentioned earlier, and let's talk about another client actually, so I don't get too much, but we have one person, but we have a fashion client, and we put all their ads in over 5 years, before they hired us, after they hired us, dumped it all in. And it turns out that works the best for them, regardless of seasonality, regardless of the sale, regardless of what they're selling. 3/4 length shots, so you can see the head down to just about the knees, in a slight profile. Those are the ads that always work better. Now we know that, and we can make sure that's in the creative brief, whether we're doing the brief or they're doing it internally, or they're doing the shoot internally, or we're doing it. Now we know that as a thing. That doesn't change the fact that the creative director might not want that. And the creative director's vision might be a very different thing, and say, it's great that works, but what I want to do is expose people to my new brand, and I must have flashing lights and very dramatic choreography in my new ads. And that's great. But yeah, 100%, you can use it to look at all that data in a way that humans couldn't do before.
Yeah. And I think the insights as well, right? There's insights that you can take away from crunching through this data that you would never gone through, even looking through, because you're not able to process that data as an independent person or individual person. Or
100%.
So this could help with your attribution, your reporting, your audience targeting.
Well, attribution's tough, because it's gonna, but yeah, it's gonna have a bias. But yes.
Yeah. I mean, attribution, when I say that, as in if you were to analyze a bunch of the campaigns that you have data for already, and then say, oh, okay, these were the ones that were high impacting touch points, or these are the touch points that show up more than others, right? Let's say. So if someone's seeing, like, if you had 2 sets of remarketing campaigns, maybe one on LinkedIn ads or one on Facebook, and you wanted to say, okay, yeah, I know Facebook is cheaper from a lead standpoint, on the CPL standpoint, but in terms of a qualified lead standpoint, where are most of the qualified lead touch points happening later on? Is it actually later on in the journey from Facebook or LinkedIn? And if Facebook ends up being that thing, then you can be like, doesn't matter about the lack of slight quality. I still get in front of more of my qualified audience compared to the other ones on the same
Yeah.
budget. So now let me go and look at the other data point.
Most people aren't there yet. Most people are still looking at Facebook on an intraday ROAS basis and saying, did you adjust budgets from campaign A to campaign B because it had a better cost per lead that day? So everything we're talking about is really exciting stuff, but agencies have to be 3 steps ahead or we all get fired. So
Yes.
so we're leveraging this stuff hard.
All right, Brooke, I know that we talked about a bunch of stuff and we probably could talk about a lot of the applications, right? But the examples that you gave were actually pretty insightful in how people could set things up internally. Is there, if you had to tell everyone to sort of take away, almost run an AI experiment that you think, or an application that you think that people should be doing, right? What is that one thing? Just have to boil it down. It could be anything. Aside from creative testing, by the way, because you've already mentioned that you use it.
The one thing I would do is encourage. So we use Otter to record our phone calls, our Zoom calls at Mason. Otter's native AI ain't hot. I would encourage everyone to download 2 years worth of call transcripts from a client from Otter and put those transcripts, and maybe it's a once a week call for 2 years. So you've got 104 calls, or maybe you missed a few because the holidays, so it's 99 calls. Put all those 99 transcripts into chat, which can handle it better than other systems, and say, what can I do better? Where did I talk too much? Where was I too aggressive? How can I learn from this? And have it coach you on what you could have done better in the call. It's very good at that. And it'll help you with your own sales calls. And it'll help you with your own, with looking at other people's sales calls. And it'll help you with analyzing your team in a non-judgmental way. So if there's one thing I think everyone should do, it's be self-aware. They can always do better, and myself most of all. And one way to coach yourself through that is to listen to those transcripts with an independent lens and say, what could I do better? That's the number one piece of advice.
Yeah, and actually in this year's first quarter, Q1, we actually did implement that, and it's been really, really interesting so far, including the angles of the strategy that dramatically changed from planning last year to what we're executing this year. I think that's a good one. What about tool-wise? And you can't say Claude, but is there anything that you specifically think tool-wise people should be, just check it out?
All of them, and I think they all have different virtues, and I think they have to be tied to a business objective.
Okay. That's fantastic. All right. If you guys haven't started using AI already, first thing to do this week is to maybe try out the one that Brooke just mentioned. I'm sure that you guys have a lot of customer data already that you could probably push into it. And if you're not seeing results, maybe take a step back and understand what you're trying to do with AI in the first place. Are you doing the generic, let me just go and spin up like 1,000 articles, when that's not what the most impactful thing is? Try to look for where the gaps are in your strategy. What I'm taking from this, is that let me go and explore the idea using AI to find out how I would execute on it, maybe implement the MVP version. Main thing is, don't be married to a single tool. Reason why is because you could be using the power of one tool for one thing, which is going to be much more beneficial for your business case versus another. Brooke, have we missed out anything so far? I mean, there's probably 1,000 things, but anything that comes to mind?
No, I appreciate your time. I think we've covered a lot. I think we both went longer than we thought we were going to, and I enjoyed it. And thank you very much.
If anyone wants to connect with you, where can they do that? Is there anything you guys are working on that you want anyone to check out?
We're working on an AI. We're AIing our whole business. Anyone who can visit me at masoninteractive.com, any form on there, I'll see if it comes across. If you fill it out, masoninteractive.com. You can go to my personal website, brookshepard.com, to see if all the podcasts I've done recently or any of our newsletters we send out. And LinkedIn always works well too.
Brilliant. And we're going to be linking that in the show notes as well, so everyone will have access to that. Otherwise, Brooke, appreciate you coming on to the show again. We'll check you guys then. See you soon.